Run! Amarachi shouted, grabbing Chisom's hand. They sprinted towards the village, hoping against hope that they could make it in time to warn everyone. In the bustling village of Mbais, nestled among the rolling hills and fertile farmlands of southern Nigeria, lived two inseparable friends, Amarachi and Chisom. The village was surrounded by lush fields and mud brick houses, following the gentle rhythm of the Igbo River. From a young age, the two girls were so close that they were sometimes mistaken to be sisters, always seen together and sharing everything life had to offer. Amarachi admired people who didn't need to fill up every space with small talk, and Chisom was one such person. The silence between them wasn't a void to be feared but a canvas for thoughts and unspoken understanding. They often fetched water from the stream together, their paths crossing almost daily. Chisom was quiet and often moved at her own pace, which made her a target for the other children, who taunted her for being slow. One afternoon, as they gathered at the stream, the bullying escalated. The other kids surrounded Chisom, mocking her as she struggled with her water pot. "Look at her, so slow she might as well be a turtle," one of them jeered, shoving her roughly. Chisom stumbled, her water pot spilling over. Anger flared within Amarachi, and she stepped forward, placing herself between Chisom and the others. "Leave her alone," she shouted, her voice shaking with rage. "What's wrong with you? Can't you see she's doing her best?" One of the boys sneered at her. "Why do you care, Amarachi? She's just slowing us all down." Amarachi squared her shoulders, feeling a surge of defiance. "Because it's wrong to treat anyone like this. Now back off before you regret it." The boy stepped forward, his expression challenging. "Or what, Amarachi? What will you do?" Without thinking, Amarachi grabbed a stick from the ground and swung it in a wide arc, forcing the boys to step back. "I said, leave her alone." The boys hesitated, taken aback by her sudden aggression. Finally, they muttered insults under their breath and retreated, leaving Chisom and Amarachi standing by the stream. Chisom looked at Amarachi with gratitude in her eyes but also with a knowing smile. "Thank you," she said softly. "But you know, I can protect myself." Amarachi smiled back, impressed by her quiet strength. "I'm Amarachi," she introduced herself, holding out her hand. "Chisom," she replied, shaking her hand. From that day, a bond began to form between them. They continued to fetch water together, their trips now filled with a silent camaraderie. The quiet companionship was comforting, a rare and beautiful thing in their bustling village. One evening, as the sun set over their village, casting long shadows across the fields, Amarachi and Chisom found themselves sitting under the baobab tree. The sky was a canvas of deep oranges and purples, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Chisom turned to Amarachi, her eyes reflecting the colors of the dusk. "You know," she said softly, breaking their usual silence, "I think this is what real friendship is. Not feeling the need to talk, just being together." Amarachi nodded, understanding completely. "You're right. It's rare to find someone who appreciates silence the way we do." One day, Chisom invited Amarachi to her favorite place, a hidden clearing in the forest known only to a few. They walked there in silence, the path leading them to a serene spot where the trees formed a natural canopy overhead. They spent the day there, lying on the soft grass, listening to the sounds of nature. As twilight approached, Chisom pointed to the horizon where the first stars were beginning to appear. "Do you ever think about how vast the universe is?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. "All the time," Amarachi replied, staring up at the sky. "It's humbling, really. Makes you realize how small we are." Chisom smiled, a serene expression on her face. And yet, here we are, finding peace in the silence, under the same stars. That night, as they sat by a small bonfire, Amarachi realized how much Chisom had changed her perspective on life. Chisom had taught her the beauty of stillness, the value of being present, and the power of a silent bond. With Chisom, Amarachi found a sanctuary in the spaces between words, a refuge in the unspoken. But the peace was not to last. One evening, as they fetched water, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. They exchanged worried glances. "Did you feel that?" Chisom asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Amarachi replied, her heart pounding. "Something's wrong." The tremors grew stronger and more frequent over the next few days. Rumors spread quickly through the village about the old dam upstream. Both decades ago, it was now showing signs of wear and tear. The village elders called a meeting to discuss the impending disaster. The dam could collapse at any moment, threatening to flood the entire village. "We have to do something," Amarachi said to Chisom as they left the meeting. "We can't just wait for it to collapse." Zainab nodded. "You're right. We know the area better than most. Maybe we can help." They decided to make the dangerous journey to the dam to see if there was anything they could do to help prevent the disaster. As they reached the dam, they saw the cracks widening, water seeping through. "We need to act fast," Amarachi said, her voice filled with urgency. Chisom nodded. "Let's start with the biggest cracks. Maybe we can reinforce them somehow." They worked together, using whatever materials they could find to reinforce the weaker sections. Amarachi's quick thinking and Chisom's unwavering determination kept them going despite the perilous situation. Just when it seemed like their efforts might be in vain, the tremors intensified. The dam was on the verge of giving way. In a moment of desperation, Chisom noticed a large boulder nearby that could be used to block the biggest crack. "We need to move that boulder," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. Amarachi looked at the boulder, then back at Chisom. "It's too heavy for the two of us alone." Out of nowhere, some of the boys who had bullied Chisom appeared. They had followed them, initially out of curiosity, but seeing the dire situation, they realized the gravity of the moment. "We need your help," Amarachi said to them, her voice filled with urgency. "We can't do this alone." The boys hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward. Together, they managed to position the boulder, temporarily stopping the worst of the leaks. "We did it," Chisom said, her voice filled with relief. "We need to go back and tell the elders," Amarachi replied. "They need to organize a more substantial effort to repair the dam properly." In the aftermath, the village came together like never before. The boys apologized to Chisom for their past behavior, acknowledging her bravery and resilience. The crisis had forged a new understanding and respect among the children. Through this dramatic event, Amarachi and Chisom's bond grew even stronger. They had faced a life-threatening challenge together and emerged victorious, their friendship now a symbol of hope and unity for the entire village. But just as the village began to settle back into its usual rhythm, another tremor shook the ground. This time, it was stronger and more violent. People ran out of their homes in panic. The elders quickly called another meeting. "We thought we had fixed the dam," one elder said, his voice trembling. "What could be causing this?" Before anyone could respond, a loud, ominous cracking sound echoed through the air. It was coming from the direction of the dam. "Amarachi, Chisom, you must go back and check the dam," the elder urged. "We need to know what's happening." They raced back to the dam, hearts pounding. As they approached, they saw the cracks had returned, worse than before. Water was gushing through, and the boulder they had placed was being pushed aside by the sheer force of the water. "We need to warn the village," Amarachi said, her voice shaking with fear. "If the dam breaks, it could wipe out everything." Chisom nodded, her face pale but determined. "Let's go, Amarachi. We don't have much time." They turned and ran back towards the village, the sound of rushing water growing louder behind them. The fate of their village hung in the balance, and they had no idea if they would make it in time. As they reached the outskirts of the village, the ground beneath them shook violently, and they heard a deafening roar. They turned around to see a massive wave of water rushing down the valley towards them. "Run!" Amarachi shouted, grabbing Chisom's hand. They sprinted towards the village, hoping against hope that they could make it in time to warn everyone. Would they be able to save their village from the impending disaster? The answer lay just beyond the horizon, in a future as uncertain as the trembling ground beneath their feet. Amarachi and Chisom sprinted through the village, shouting warnings as they went. The villagers, seeing the terror in their eyes, quickly began to evacuate, grabbing what little they could carry. "To the hills," one of the elders shouted, pointing towards the higher ground. "Everyone, to the hills." The entire village moved as one, a wave of panic and urgency. Mothers clutched their children, and the elderly were supported by their families. The roar of the approaching water grew louder, a terrifying reminder of the impending disaster. As they reached the base of the hills, Amarachi and Chisom turned back to look at their village one last time. The dam, weakened beyond repair, finally gave way. A massive wall of water surged forward, engulfing the fields and homes in its path. "Keep moving," Amarachi urged, pulling Chisom along. "We can't stop now." They climbed higher, the sound of destruction below driving them onward. When they finally reached a safe vantage point, they collapsed to the ground, panting and exhausted. The villagers gathered around, their eyes wide with shock and disbelief as they watched their village disappear under the floodwaters. For a moment, there was only silence, broken only by the distant roar of the water. Then, slowly, people began to murmur, trying to process the enormity of what had just happened. "What do we do now?" a young boy asked, his voice trembling. One of the elders stepped forward, his face lined with determination. "We rebuild," he said firmly. "We have each other, and we have our lives. We will start again." Amarachi and Chisom looked at each other, their bond stronger than ever. They knew the road ahead would be difficult, but they also knew they would face it together. As the days passed, the villagers began to organize. They found temporary shelter in the hills and started planning for the future. Messages were sent to neighboring villages, asking for assistance. One morning, as Amarachi and Chisom were helping to distribute food, a group of strangers arrived. They were from a nearby village that had heard about the disaster. Among them was a man who introduced himself as Ibrahim. "We heard about what happened and came to help," Ibrahim said. "We brought supplies and tools. Together, we can rebuild." The villagers welcomed the newcomers with open arms, grateful for their support. The combined efforts of both villages gave everyone hope. Slowly but surely, they began to clear the debris and salvage what they could. Amarachi and Chisom worked tirelessly, their friendship a source of strength for both of them. They led by example, showing others that even in the face of such devastating loss, resilience and unity could prevail. One evening, as they sat by a fire, Chisom turned to Amarachi. "You saved me that day at the stream," she said softly. "And together, we saved our village. I couldn't have done it without you." Amarachi smiled, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames. And I couldn't have done it without you. We make a good team, Chisom. As the stars appeared in the night sky, the villagers gathered around the fire, sharing stories of their past and dreams of their future. The bond between them grew stronger, forged in the crucible of adversity. Together, they would rebuild their village, stronger and more united than ever before. And through it all, Amarachi and Chisom's friendship remained a beacon of hope and resilience, a testament to the power of silent understanding and unwavering support.